The night I discovered what my family was really doing with Preston Pharmaceuticals, I was working late in my father's office. As chief financial officer and the CEO's daughter, I had access to everything, or so they thought. "Julia, honey, you work too hard," Dad always said, patting my shoulder with paternal pride. "Just like your old man." What he really meant was, stay busy with the obvious tasks. Don't look too closely at the hidden ones. Don't question why certain numbers didn't add up, or why some files were marked executive access only. But that night, exhausted and frustrated after another board meeting where my concerns had been dismissed, I decided to look closer. The irregularities had been bothering me for months. Clinical trial results that seemed too good to be true. Research budgets that fluctuated wildly. And most concerning, a pattern of small pharmaceutical companies being acquired and then mysteriously shutting down their most promising drug trials. "You're being paranoid," my brother Michael had said that morning, barely looking up from his phone. As chief operating officer, he should have been more concerned. "The numbers are fine. Focus on the quarterly reports." But the numbers weren't fine. And after everyone had left for the day, I finally found proof. Hidden in an encrypted folder marked Project Phoenix were the real clinical trial results. Not the ones we'd submitted to the FDA, but the actual data showing our new wonder drug had failed spectacularly. Worse, it had caused severe side effects that had been carefully covered up. My hands shook as I dug deeper. Emails between my father and the research team ordering them to alter the data. Financial records showing millions in hush money paid to silence whistleblowers. And most damning of all, proof that we'd been deliberately acquiring and shutting down competing drugs that might have actually helped people. Preston Pharmaceuticals, my family's legacy for 3 generations, wasn't just committing fraud. They were actively suppressing life-saving medications to protect their market share. I was still copying files when my father's private line rang. The caller ID showed M. Chen, Martin Chen, our head of security. "Sir," Chen's voice echoed through the speaker. The system flagged unauthorized access to Project Phoenix files. My blood ran cold. I hadn't considered that the files might be monitored. "From where?" Dad's voice was sharp. "Your office computer, sir. Started about an hour ago." A pause. "Julia." "Yes, sir. Should I?" "No. I'll handle it. But put the plan in motion, just in case." The plan. Something in his tone made me move faster, copying everything I could find onto an encrypted drive. I had just pulled the drive free when the office door opened. Dad stood there, still in his dinner jacket from the charity gala he'd attended. His face was calm, but his eyes were steel. "Working late, sweetheart?" "Just catching up on some reports," I said, slipping the drive into my pocket. He stepped into the office, closing the door behind him. Funny thing about reports, they usually don't require accessing classified research files. "Dad, how much did you see?" I met his gaze steadily. "Enough." He nodded slowly, as if I'd confirmed something. "I was afraid of this. You always were too smart for your own good." "The trials failed," I said. "People died, and you covered it all up. We did what was necessary." "Necessary?" My voice rose. "You buried evidence that could have saved lives. You're still marketing that drug as safe. Keep your voice down." He moved to his desk, pressed a button on his phone. "Martin, proceed." The office door opened again. Martin Chen entered, followed by 2 men I'd never seen before. "What's going on?" I asked, though I already knew. "You're having a breakdown," Dad said softly. The stress of the job, the responsibility, it's all become too much. I'm not. The private facility is very discreet, he continued as if I hadn't spoken. You'll have the best care money can buy. I backed away from the approaching men. You can't do this. Of course I can. I'm your father. His smile was gentle, reasonable. I'm protecting you, just like always. By committing fraud, by hurting people, by building something that will last. His voice hardened. Something you're now threatening to destroy. I lunged for the door, but Chen was faster. His grip on my arm was professional, impersonal. Your choice, Dad said. Go quietly to the facility, rest, recover. $2 million in a private account when you're better. Or, the threat hung in the air. I thought of the whistleblowers who'd been silenced. How many of them had simply disappeared? How long? Until you're well again. He meant, until they were sure I wouldn't talk. I let my shoulders slump, projecting defeat. Can I at least pack a bag? Already taken care of. Chen gestured to the door where a small suitcase waited. They planned this. Probably had it ready for weeks, just in case. Julia. Dad's voice softened. This is for the best. The company, our family's legacy. It's bigger than any one person. I looked at him, really looked at the man who taught me right from wrong, who'd encouraged me to always tell the truth. Now he was burying the truth along with his daughter's freedom. You'll see, he said. In time, you'll understand. I let Chen lead me out, past the family photos on the wall. Mom, gone 10 years now, smiling from behind her desk as chairman of the board. Michael and me at graduation, both heading for our predetermined roles in the family business. Generations of Prestons building their pharmaceutical empire. All of it built on lies. The drive felt heavy in my pocket as we took the private elevator to the garage. They hadn't searched me. Why would they? I was just their broken little girl, having a mental health crisis. Chen's men escorted me to a waiting car with tinted windows. As we pulled away from Preston Pharmaceuticals' gleaming headquarters, I caught my father watching from his office window. He raised his hand in what looked like a wave goodbye. He had no idea it was really goodbye. The facility is very comfortable, Chen said from the front seat. Private room, garden access, all the amenities. I said nothing, letting them think I was sedated by whatever they'd slipped into my water back in Dad's office. Amateur move, really. I'd seen it coming and only pretended to drink. 3 hours later, they delivered me to Aurora Grove Wellness Center, a beautiful estate nestled in the Berkshire Mountains. The kind of place rich families sent their problems to disappear. Welcome, Ms. Preston, the intake nurse said warmly. We'll take good care of you. I'm sure you will, I thought. Right up until I escape. The drive was still in my pocket, heavy with secrets that could bring down an empire. My father thought he was buying my silence with $2 million and a padded cell. What he'd really done was give me everything I needed to destroy him. I smiled at the nurse, playing my role. Thank you. I'm so tired. Of course you are, dear. Let's get you settled. As she led me inside, I was already planning. They thought I was having a breakdown. Really? I was just getting started. Aurora Grove Wellness Center was a prison disguised as paradise. The gardens were beautiful, the staff unfailingly polite, and every window was fitted with unbreakable glass. Your father calls daily to check on your progress, Dr. Wells told me during our morning session. He's very concerned about your delusions. I smiled vacantly, playing the dutiful patient. The medication helps. Everything seems clearer now. She made a note in her file. They all loved making notes, documenting my supposed recovery from paranoid fantasies about corporate fraud. What they didn't know was that I was documenting everything too. The drive with Preston Pharmaceuticals' secrets was safe, hidden in the one place they'd never check. Inside the cheap plastic cross I'd been allowed to keep for religious comfort. But that wasn't the only evidence I was gathering. Every day, I added to my mental inventory of Aurora Grove, staff rotations, security protocols, delivery schedules. I made friends with other patients, particularly those who had their own reasons to want out. Like Safia, a hedge fund manager's wife who'd threatened to expose his Ponzi scheme. They all said I was crazy too. She whispered during art therapy. Turns out being right looks a lot like being insane. Or Marcus, a former tech executive whose depression coincided with discovering his company's data mining operations. He taught me to hack the facility's supposedly secure Wi-Fi during our shared recreation time. The best prison, he explained, is one where the inmates think they deserve to be there. I also had an unexpected ally on the outside, Sarah Zhang, a junior researcher who'd worked on the failed drug trials. She'd reached out through a carefully encrypted email sent during one of my sanctioned internet sessions. I saved copies too, she wrote, and I know where the bodies are buried. Literally, in one case. Let me help. Slowly, methodically, I built my network and planned my escape. The facility's security was good, but it was designed to keep unstable patients in, not to stop a clear-headed woman with resources and determination. 3 months into my treatment, I made my move. It started with a fire alarm at 3 a.m. Not a real fire, just a clever bit of programming Marcus had planted in the system. As staff rushed to follow evacuation protocols, I slipped out through the kitchen delivery entrance. Using an ID card I'd carefully cloned during my volunteer work in the administrative office. A car was waiting, driven by Sarah, who'd taken a considerable risk coming in person. "Your father's security team checks on me weekly," she said as we sped away. "They have no idea I'm the one who first tipped you off about the trials." I changed clothes in the back seat, transforming from patient to professional. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere they'll never look for you." That somewhere turned out to be a small tech startup in Seattle, run by Marcus's former protégé. They needed a CFO who understood both finance and ethics. I needed a base of operations and legitimate income that couldn't be traced to Julia Preston. Emma Walsh was hired the next day, her impeccable references and background all carefully constructed by Marcus's network of disillusioned tech experts. "Your father's going crazy trying to find you," Sarah reported during one of our secure video calls. "He's hired private investigators, put pressure on local police. He really thinks you've had some kind of breakdown and wandered off." "What about Michael?" "Your brother's been named interim CFO. She hesitated. "He's pushing forward with new trials. More aggressive ones." My hands clenched. "More cover-ups?" "Worse. They're testing on vulnerable populations. People who won't be missed if something goes wrong." I had to move carefully. Simply exposing the evidence wasn't enough. Preston Pharmaceuticals had too many friends in high places, too many ways to bury the truth. I needed to build an airtight case that not even their army of lawyers could dismantle. For 2 years, I lived as Emma Walsh, earning trust and respect in Seattle's tech community while quietly gathering more evidence. Sarah kept me updated on Preston Pharmaceuticals' activities, documenting every violation, every cover-up. Marcus, who'd engineered his own recovery and release, helped me establish secure communication channels with other whistleblowers. Former employees, research subjects, family members of victims, all with pieces of the puzzle. Sophia, now free and divorced, used her financial expertise to trace the money trails. Shell companies, offshore accounts, slush funds for bribes. It was all documented and verified. "They're getting sloppy," she reported. "Your brother doesn't have your head for numbers. He's leaving traces everywhere." The final piece came from an unexpected source, my mother's old assistant, now retired. She contacted me through Sarah, revealing that my mother had kept her own secret files before her convenient heart attack 10 years ago. She knew something was wrong with the trial data, the assistant said. She was going to expose it all. Then suddenly she was dead. Natural causes, they said. But nothing about Preston Pharmaceuticals was natural. I received regular updates about my family from Sarah. Dad was showing signs of strain, drinking more, sleeping less. Michael was living large on company money, dating supermodels, making increasingly erratic decisions. "They think they're invincible," Sarah said. "The great Preston family, above the law." "Everyone's invincible until they're not," I replied. By the 3rd year, my case was solid. Every piece of evidence verified, every witness prepared, every document authenticated. The SEC was quietly building their own investigation based on anonymous tips, and the FDA was reviewing the trial data with growing concern. It was time. I chose the annual shareholders meeting for my return. Dad always made it a big event. Hundreds of investors, media coverage, a celebration of Preston Pharmaceuticals' continued dominance of the industry. This year would be different. I stood in front of my hotel mirror, transforming back into Julia Preston. The Seattle tech executive disappeared, replaced by the prodigal daughter returned from her breakdown. My phone buzzed. "Sarah, security's been updated since you left. New protocols, new team." "But not new enough," I said, thinking of the access codes Marcus had acquired. "Is everything in place?" "SEC agents are standing by. FDA representatives too." And she paused. "There's something else you should know. About your mother's death." I gripped the phone tighter. "What about it?" "I found her real autopsy report. The one that wasn't released to the press." Her voice was grim. "Julia, it wasn't a heart attack." The toxicology showed. "Tell me everything." I cut in. "I want to know exactly what they did." As she talked, I felt the last traces of doubt or mercy fade away. This wasn't just about corporate fraud anymore. This was about murder, corruption, and a family that had lost its soul in pursuit of profit. Tomorrow, the Preston empire would fall, and I would be there to watch it burn. I checked my reflection one final time. Professional suit, perfect makeup, not a hint of the past 3 years visible on my face. I looked exactly like the daughter they tried to erase. But I wasn't that woman anymore. That Julia Preston had died in a mountain facility 3 years ago. This Julia Preston was back for revenge. And she had receipts. Preston Pharmaceuticals' annual shareholders meeting was held in the grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton. 3 years ago, I would have been at the head table, reviewing quarterly reports and profit projections. Today, I watched from the lobby as investors filed in, all eager to hear about another record-breaking year. If they only knew what their money was really funding. "SEC agents are in position," Sarah murmured through my earpiece. "FDA representatives too, just waiting for your signal." I checked my phone one last time. Everything was ready. The evidence organized, the witnesses prepared, the regulatory agencies standing by. 3 years of work culminating in the next hour. Any sign of security noticing me? I asked, adjusting my visitor's badge. Amazing what Marcus's hacking skills could accomplish. They're watching for Julia Preston, the mental patient, Sarah replied. Not Julia Preston, the corporate executive. Your father's been telling everyone you're in a facility in Switzerland. They're not even looking here. I smiled. Dad's cover story had actually helped me. Everyone was expecting a broken woman, not someone who'd spent 3 years building a case against her own family. The ballroom was packed when I slipped in. My father stood at the podium, silver-haired and imposing in his perfectly tailored suit. Michael sat to his right, scrolling through his phone with his usual bored expression. Preston Pharmaceuticals continues to lead the industry in innovative treatments, Dad was saying. Our latest drug trials show unprecedented success rates. I thought of the real trial data hidden in my encrypted files, the covered-up deaths, the falsified results. And now, he continued, I'm pleased to announce our newest initiative. Actually, I said, standing up in the middle of the crowd, I'd like to make an announcement first. The room fell silent. Dad squinted into the audience, not recognizing me at first. Then his face went pale. Julia? Hi, Dad. I started walking toward the podium. Miss me? Michael finally looked up from his phone. His eyes widened in shock. Security, Dad barked, but I was already moving. Before anyone does anything rash, I said loudly, you might want to turn on CNBC. Right now. Someone did. On the massive screens around the ballroom, the breaking news headline appeared. Preston Pharmaceuticals under federal investigation. SEC and FDA raid corporate HURTERs. What is this? Michael demanded, standing up. What have you done? Me. I reached the stage. I just organized the evidence. All those files you thought disappeared with me. They've spent the last 3 years being verified by federal investigators. Dad's hands gripped the podium. Julia, you're not well. You need help. That's your answer for everything, isn't it? I cut him off. Anyone who threatens your precious company must be crazy. Just like Mom was crazy when she discovered the truth about the trials. Your mother died of natural causes, he said quickly. Too quickly. I pulled out my phone, held it up. Actually, I have her real autopsy report. The one that shows lethal levels of your miracle drug in her system. The one that proves you murdered her when she threatened to expose you. The room erupted in chaos. Investors started shouting questions. Reporters who'd been covering the standard corporate event suddenly had a much bigger story. You can't prove anything, Michael sneered. But his face had gone ashen. Can't I? I turned to address the crowd. For the past 3 years, I've been gathering evidence. Real clinical trial data. Financial records showing millions in bribes and hush money. Witness testimony from researchers, test subjects, even former executives. She's delusional, Dad tried, but his voice shook. Security? Remove her. Your security team is currently busy with federal agents. I smiled. And speaking of federal agents, right on cue, the ballroom doors opened. FBI agents poured in, followed by SEC investigators and FDA officials. William Preston, the lead agent announced, you're under arrest for securities fraud, conspiracy, and first-degree murder. Dad stared at me as they approached with handcuffs. Everything I did, he said quietly, was to protect this company, our legacy. No, I replied. Everything you did was to protect your own power, even if it meant killing your wife, destroying your daughter, hurting countless innocent people. You'll regret this, Michael hissed as agents moved to arrest him too. You're nothing without this family. I watched as they led my father and brother away in handcuffs. The great Preston men, finally facing consequences. Sarah appeared at my side. Your mother's old assistant is here, ready to testify about what really happened 10 years ago. I nodded. Make sure she's protected. They still have friends who might try to silence her. The next few hours were a blur of federal interviews, press statements, and shocked shareholders trying to salvage their investments. Preston Pharmaceuticals stock was already in free fall. What happens now? Sarah asked as we watched agents box up evidence from Dad's office. Now, I picked up the family photo from his desk. Mom, Dad, Michael and me, all smiling for the camera, all pretending to be perfect. Now the truth comes out. All of it. Over the next few weeks, the Preston empire crumbled. The evidence was ironclad, the witnesses credible, the paper trail undeniable. Dad and Michael faced multiple life sentences. The company was placed under federal supervision. New management was brought in to salvage what could be saved. The toxic drugs were pulled from the market, and research began into actually helping people instead of just making profit. I testified at their trial, laying out every detail of their crimes. Dad never looked at me. Michael tried to cut a deal, offering to testify against our father, but the prosecutors didn't need him. They had everything they needed. The press called it the pharmaceutical scandal of the decade. Movies were optioned, books were written. Everyone wanted to know how the Preston princess had brought down her own family's corrupt empire. But I wasn't interested in fame. I had a different mission now. 6 months after the arrests, I stood at my mother's grave. The official cause of death had been updated, her murder finally acknowledged. I did it, Mom, I said softly. I finished what you started. Sarah joined me, carrying a stack of papers. The new board wants you to take over as CEO, she said. Help rebuild the company the right way. I considered it. The chance to transform Preston Pharmaceuticals into what it should have been all along, a company that actually helped people. On one condition, I said. We rename it after Mom. Sarah smiled. Catherine Pharmaceuticals does have a nice ring to it. I placed flowers on the grave, thinking about legacy and truth, and the real meaning of family. Dad and Michael would spend the rest of their lives in prison, paying for their crimes. The corrupt empire they'd built had fallen, but something new could rise from the ashes. Something honest. Ready to get to work? Sarah asked. I took one last look at the grave, then turned toward the future. Always. 1 year later, I sat in the CEO's office, my office, reviewing the latest trial results. Real results this time, showing promise for treating previously incurable conditions. A news alert popped up on my computer. William Preston found dead in prison cell, apparent suicide. I closed the alert without reading it. The past was done. I had a company to run, people to help, wrongs to right. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Your father left a letter for you. Burn it, I replied. Some chapters needed to stay closed. Catherine Pharmaceuticals was thriving, its stock price recovering as investors recognized our commitment to ethical research and development. The same drive for excellence that had corrupted my father was now being used to save lives. Sarah knocked on my door. Ready for the board meeting? I gathered my papers, straightened my jacket, and stood up. The family portrait that once dominated this office was gone, replaced by my mother's medical school graduation photo. She was smiling, full of hope and purpose, just like I was now. "Ready?" I said. The Preston legacy was dead, but something better had taken its place. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just exposing the truth. It's building something true from the ruins of lies. 3 months ago, I died in a tragic hiking accident at Cascade Falls. At least, that's what my sister Diana told everyone. The reality was far more complicated and much darker. I watched the local news report from a motel room 50 miles outside of Seattle, my coffee growing cold as the anchors solemnly described my fatal fall. Sarah Mitchell, 32, was reported missing after failing to return from a solo hiking trip, the anchor read. After an extensive 3-day search, authorities discovered signs of a tragic accident near the Upper Falls. While no body has been recovered, experts believe survival would have been impossible given the conditions. The camera cut to Diana, her perfect face streaked with artfully applied tears. "She was my best friend," she sobbed. "My only sister. I can't believe she's gone." I turned off the TV, my hands shaking with anger. Best friend. Right? That would be why she'd taken out a $5 million life insurance policy on me 2 months before my accident. The truth was, I hadn't been anywhere near Cascade Falls that day. I'd been in my Seattle apartment, preparing for a business trip to Phoenix, when I got the call that changed everything. "Ms. Mitchell." The voice had been professional, cautious. "This is Agent Cooper with the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. Do you have a moment to discuss your sister, Diana Mitchell?" That call had saved my life, because Agent Cooper had evidence that Diana had been planning my death for months. Bank records showing massive debt. A newly purchased life insurance policy with herself as sole beneficiary. Suspicious internet searches about untraceable poisons and accidents that look natural. "We believe your sister may be planning to harm you," Agent Cooper had said. "We need your help to catch her before she succeeds." And so began my death. A carefully orchestrated disappearance, staged to look exactly like what Diana had been planning. The FBI had helped me vanish, leaving just enough evidence at Cascade Falls to make my accident convincing. For 3 months, I'd watched from the shadows as Diana played her role perfectly. The grieving sister, devastated by loss, but bravely carrying on. She'd even started a foundation in my name, though I had no doubt where that money was really going. Now, sitting in my motel room with case files spread across the bed, I was finally ready to come back to life. The insurance company deposited the funds this morning, Agent Cooper confirmed over the phone. $5 million, straight into her account. We have the transfer records. And the foundation donations, already traced to offshore accounts. Your sister's been busy. I picked up a photo taken just yesterday. Diana at a luxury car dealership, writing a check for a new Mercedes, grieving in style. The funeral's tomorrow, I said. Everything ready? Teams are in position. Just remember to wait for my signal before you make your entrance. I smiled, thinking of Diana's face when she saw me. Oh, don't worry. I want this to be perfect. Perfect, like Diana had always been. Perfect grades, perfect hair, perfect life. While I was the awkward one, the plain one, the one who had to work twice as hard for half the recognition. Our parents' death 5 years ago had only widened the gap. Diana had gotten the lion's share of the inheritance naturally. The golden child. I'd gotten just enough to start my own business. a small tech consulting firm that had finally started to become successful. Too successful, apparently. Diana had borrowed heavily against her inheritance, making risky investments that didn't pay off. By the time she took out the life insurance policy on me, she was nearly bankrupt. I'd never seen it coming. That's what hurt the most. Even knowing how shallow she was, how self-centered, I'd never imagined she'd try to kill her own sister for money. A knock at my motel room door made me jump. Agent Cooper stood outside, a garment bag over her arm. "Thought you might want to dress appropriately for your own funeral," she said, hanging the bag on the door. Inside was a sleek black dress, elegant but understated. Perfect for a ghost returning to haunt her killer. The wires built into the neckline, Cooper explained. Completely invisible, but it'll pick up everything. And the cameras. She handed me a pair of designer sunglasses. Built in. Everything will be recorded from your perspective. I tried them on, studying my reflection. With my dark hair pulled back severely and dramatic makeup, I barely recognized myself. Good. The less I looked like the old Sarah, the more dramatic the reveal would be. "Your sister hired someone to help stage the accident," Cooper said, watching me prepare. "A local guide who was supposed to verify seeing you on the trail that day. He rolled over on her as soon as we showed him the evidence. His testimony alone would convict her." "But that's not enough, is it?" I turned from the mirror. "You want her to confess." "On camera, wearing a wire, with 50 witnesses." Cooper nodded. "No wiggle room. No legal gray areas. Just pure, incontrovertible proof of premeditated fraud and attempted murder." I thought of all the times Diana had overshadowed me, dismissed me, treated me like an afterthought in her perfect life. Tomorrow, she'd learn just how big a mistake she'd made in underestimating me. "Get some sleep," Cooper advised. "Tomorrow's going to be intense." But sleep was impossible. I spent the night reviewing the evidence, making sure every detail was perfect. Bank statements showing the money trail. Emails between Diana and the guide discussing the accident. The life insurance policy, taken out with forged signatures and backdated documents. Most damning of all were the text messages we'd recovered from Diana's cloud backup. Messages to her boyfriend, Marcus, laying out the whole plan. "Sarah's finally worth more dead than alive," she'd written. "Once the insurance pays out, we'll have everything we ever wanted." Marcus, to his credit, had been horrified. He'd broken up with her immediately and gone straight to the FBI. His statement was part of the evidence package. Dawn found me still awake, watching the sun rise over the Seattle skyline. In 6 hours, I'd be attending my own funeral. In 7, my sister's life would implode. The church was one of those grand old buildings in the historic district, all Gothic spires and stained glass. Diana had chosen it for maximum dramatic effect, no doubt. The parking lot was already full when we arrived. She'd invited hundreds of people to witness her performance. "Remember," Cooper said as we parked a block away, "wait for my signal. We need her to incriminate herself before you make your entrance." I nodded, adjusting my sunglasses. Through the tiny camera, I could see the funeral guests arriving in their somber best. Many were crying. Diana had clearly sold my death well. "There she is," Cooper pointed. Diana emerged from a black limousine, stunning in designer mourning wear. Her blonde hair was artfully tousled, her makeup perfect despite the tears. She clutched Marcus's mother's arm as if she could barely walk from grief. Marcus himself was conspicuously absent. He'd refused to participate in this farce. "Audio check," a voice said in my hidden earpiece. Testing. 1, 2. I spoke softly. Receiving. Cameras online. Another voice confirmed. All units in position. This was really happening. After 3 months of hiding, of watching my sister profit from my death, I was about to turn her world upside down. You okay? Cooper asked, noting my expression. I thought about Diana's text messages planning my murder, about the fake grief, the stolen money, the sheer calculated cruelty of it all. I'm perfect, I said. Let's go haunt my sister. The funeral service was exactly as grandiose as I'd expected from Diana. White lilies covered every surface, my supposed favorite flower, though she'd never bothered to learn that I actually preferred sunflowers. A massive portrait of me dominated the altar, clearly photoshopped to match Diana's preferred image of her sister. Guest count is over 300, Agent Cooper murmured in my earpiece as we watched from our hidden position in the church's side entrance. Your sister really went all out. Of course she did, I whispered back. She's playing the role of a lifetime. Through my camera-equipped sunglasses, I recorded everything. The greeting faces, many of whom I barely recognized. The expensive flower arrangements with cards proclaiming in loving memory. The donation box for the fraudulent foundation Diana had started in my name. Target approaching microphone, another agent reported. Showtime. Diana glided to the podium like an actress taking center stage. Her black channel dress probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. The insurance money was clearly already being put to use. My beloved sister, she began, her voice trembling perfectly. My Sarah, my best friend. I had to admire her performance. The slight catch in her voice, the elegant dab at her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. It was masterful. Sarah was more than just my sister, Diana continued. She was my rock, my conscience, my greatest supporter. Through my earpiece, I heard Agent Cooper snort softly. We'd both read the text messages where Diana had called me a useless burden and plotted my death. When she went missing that day, Diana's voice broke beautifully. I knew something was wrong. Sarah was so careful, so responsible. She would never have taken risks on that trail. Actually, I was an experienced hiker who tackled much harder trails than Cascade Falls. But Diana had never bothered to learn that about me either. The foundation we've started in her name, she went on, will help other families dealing with similar tragedies. Already, your generous donations have made such a difference. Money transfer confirmed, an FBI analyst reported in my earpiece. Another 100,000 moved offshore this morning. I smiled coldly. Diana hadn't wasted any time laundering the foundation money through her network of shell companies. I just wish. Diana dabbed her eyes again. I just wish I'd been able to say goodbye, to tell her how much I loved her. Target is moving to phase 2, Cooper murmured. Get ready. Right on cue, Diana's voice strengthened with false resolve. But Sarah wouldn't want us to dwell in sadness. She'd want us to celebrate her life. That's why, in her memory, I'm announcing a new initiative. She went on to describe an elaborate charitable program that would never exist. More ways to collect donations, more schemes to steal money in my name. We've got it all, Cooper confirmed. The foundation fraud, the insurance scam, everything. Time for phase 3. I watched as one of our undercover agents approached the podium, handed Diana a note. Her performance didn't slip for a second as she read it. Oh, she said softly into the microphone. I've just been informed that they may have found something at the falls. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This was the moment Diana had planned carefully, a dramatic announcement that would cement the story of my death and eliminate any lingering questions. The search teams, her voice shook, they've discovered evidence, personal items that confirm. She pressed the handkerchief to her mouth. That confirmed my beloved sister is truly gone. The congregation erupted in fresh grief. Diana sank gracefully into her seat, accepting comfort from the wealthy socialites she'd invited to witness her performance. All units in position, Cooper said tersely, waiting for the signal. I watched through my camera as Diana leaned close to one of her friends, whispering something that made them both smile slightly, probably already planning how to spend more of my insurance money. The insurance company's fraud department is standing by, another agent reported. They're ready to freeze the accounts on your word. Diana stood again, moving back to the podium. This was it, the final act of her performance. The part where she would give a touching speech about accepting closure and moving forward, about honoring my memory through her foundation. Sarah would be so touched by this outpouring of love, she began. By your generosity, your support. Now, Cooper said firmly, go. I took a deep breath and stepped through the side door. The first person to notice me was an elderly woman in the back row. Her gasp was audible even over Diana's speech. Then another person saw me, and another. The whispers spread like wildfire through the congregation. Diana, caught up in her performance, didn't notice at first. And though we may never fully recover from this loss, she continued. Diana, I said clearly, my voice carrying through the church's perfect acoustics, I think you've recovered just fine. The new Mercedes proves that. She froze. For just a moment, her perfect mask slipped, revealing naked shock and something else, fury. Then she screamed. It wasn't the practiced, elegant cry of her performance. This was raw, primal, real. She staggered back from the podium as I walked slowly up the center aisle. No, she whispered. No, this isn't possible. What's wrong, sister? I asked pleasantly. You look like you've seen a ghost. You're dead, she said. You're dead. I made sure. She cut herself off, but it was too late. The words hung in the air like a confession. You made sure. I repeated, still advancing. Made sure how, exactly? By hiring someone to verify my presence on a trail I never visited. By forging documents? By planning my accident down to the last detail. I don't know what you're talking about. She tried to recover. Sarah, I've been so worried. Where have you been? Cut the act, I said coldly. The FBI has everything. The insurance fraud. The foundation scam. The text messages planning my murder. On cue, Agent Cooper and her team emerged from their positions around the church. Diana's eyes darted between them like a trapped animal. This is ridiculous, she laughed nervously. There's clearly been a misunderstanding. The only misunderstanding, I said, reaching the podium, was you thinking you could get away with this. I turned to face the shocked congregation. My sister took out a $5 million life insurance policy on me 2 months ago. She hired someone to help fake my death. She's been stealing donation money through a fraudulent foundation. And now, I smiled coldly at Diana. Now she's going to face the consequences. You can't prove anything, she hissed. I tapped my sunglasses. Actually, I just did. This entire conversation is being recorded, including your little slip about making sure I was dead. The color drained from her face. Ms. Diana Mitchell. Agent Cooper stepped forward, badge displayed. You're under arrest for insurance fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit murder. As Cooper began reading Diana her rights, I surveyed the gathered crowd. The shocked faces, the dawning understanding, the cameras already coming out to record this spectacular moment. Diana had wanted an audience for her performance. Now she had one for her downfall. It was perfect. Diana Mitchell, how do you plead? The courtroom was packed 3 months after my funeral. Diana stood at the defendant's table, wearing a carefully chosen pale blue suit that made her look younger, more vulnerable. Her attorney had clearly coached her on appearance. Gone were the designer labels and perfect makeup. This was Diana 2.0, the misunderstood sister. Not guilty, Your Honor. I sat in the front row, directly in her line of sight. She hadn't looked at me once since being let in. The evidence against her was overwhelming. The FBI had built an airtight case. Bank records, text messages, emails, witness testimony from the guide she'd hired, and most damning of all, the video from my funeral, where she'd accidentally confessed. But Diana had never admitted defeat gracefully. Her defense was creative. I had to give her that. According to her lawyer, she'd been the victim here. She claimed I had orchestrated the whole thing to frame her, that I'd faked my own death to destroy her life and steal her inheritance. The insurance policy, forged by me. The text messages, planted. The offshore accounts, must have been my doing. The prosecution calls Sarah Mitchell to the stand. I walked to the witness box, feeling Diana's eyes finally fix on me with barely concealed hatred. Ms. Mitchell, the prosecutor began, please tell us about the events leading up to your alleged death. For the next hour, I laid out the whole story. The FBI's warning, the evidence they'd shown me of Diana's planning, the careful operation to catch her in the act. And why? The prosecutor asked. Did you agree to participate in this sting operation instead of simply confronting your sister? I looked directly at Diana for the first time, because I couldn't believe it was true. I needed to understand why my own sister would want me dead. Objection. Diana's lawyer shot up. Speculation about my client's intentions. Sustained, the judge ruled. The jury will disregard that last statement. But I'd seen several jurors' expressions. They'd heard what they needed to hear. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Every day revealed new details of Diana's scheme. The insurance agent testified about the forged policy documents. The hiking guide described how she paid him to lie about seeing me on the trail. Marcus, Diana's ex-boyfriend, detailed the conversations where she planned my accident. Through it all, Diana maintained her innocent act. Tears at appropriate moments, confused looks when damning evidence was presented, hurt glances at me, as if she couldn't understand why her beloved sister would do this to her. It might have worked, if not for the video. On the final day of testimony, the prosecution played the complete recording from my funeral. The camera in my sunglasses had captured everything in perfect clarity. Diana's performance, her shock at seeing me, and most importantly, her damning words, "You're dead, I made sure." The jury took less than 2 hours to reach a verdict. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. Diana's perfect mask cracked. On the charge of insurance fraud, we find the defendant guilty. Her fingers gripped the table until her knuckles went white. On the charge of wire fraud, we find the defendant guilty. A small sound escaped her, something between a gasp and a snarl. As the judge prepared to announce sentencing, Diana finally snapped. "You ruined everything," she screamed, turning to face me. "It was perfect. I had it all planned. You were supposed to die, and I was supposed to." "Ms. Mitchell," the judge thundered, "control yourself, or you will be removed." But Diana was beyond control. 20 years of carefully maintained facade crumbled in an instant. "You were nothing," she shrieked as bailiffs moved to restrain her. "Just a burden. A nobody. I deserved that money. I deserved." They dragged her out, her screams echoing through the courthouse. The judge called a brief recess to restore order. Agent Cooper touched my arm. "You okay?" I nodded, watching the door where Diana had disappeared. I finally got my answer. About why she did it. About who she really is. I gathered my things. And who I am. The sentencing, when it came, was severe. 25 years for conspiracy to commit murder. 10 years each for the fraud charges, to be served consecutively. No possibility of parole for at least 30 years. Diana's perfect life was over. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited with cameras and microphones. "Ms. Mitchell, how does it feel to send your own sister to prison? Any comment on the foundation money still missing? Will you be writing a book about your experience?" I stopped at the top of the steps, considering my response carefully. "My sister died long before she tried to kill me," I said finally. "I just didn't want to see it. Today isn't about revenge or justice. It's about truth. And sometimes the truth hurts worse than any lie." 6 months later, I stood at Cascade Falls, watching the water thunder down. The place where I was supposed to die had become something of a tourist attraction after the trial. People took selfies, trying to spot where the accident was meant to happen. My tech consulting firm had flourished, ironically enough. The publicity from the trial had brought in new clients, people who appreciated someone who could spot complex fraud schemes. The insurance money had been returned, the foundation dissolved, and Diana's offshore accounts frozen. She'd lost everything: money, freedom, reputation. Her perfect image shattered beyond repair. I'd received a letter from her last week, the first contact since her sentencing. Just 2 lines. "I would have given you half, if you just died like you were supposed to. Think about that while you enjoy your victory." I'd burned the letter without responding. Some relationships couldn't be fixed. Some betrayals went too deep. My phone buzzed, Agent Cooper, checking in as she still did occasionally. "Heard from our mutual friend," she texted. "Just more poison," I replied. "You know, most people would be more traumatized by all this." I looked out at the falls, thinking about strength and survival and the strange ways life tests us. "Most people," I texted back, "haven't had to attend their own funeral." A family of hikers passed by, the children pointing excitedly at the waterfall. Their mother held their hands tightly, keeping them safe from the edge. Sisters, I noticed, about the same age difference as Diana and me. "Be careful up there," I called out. "The view can be deceiving." The mother smiled gratefully, pulling her girls back from the railing. They continued up the trail, their laughter carrying on the wind. I took one last look at the falls before turning away. Diana had chosen this place to end my story. Instead, it had become the beginning of a new one. My phone buzzed again. Work this time. A potential new client, worried about financial irregularities in their family business. "I have some experience with that," I told them, walking back to my car. "Let me show you what to look for." The sun was setting as I drove away from Cascade Falls, painting the sky in shades of gold and purple. In my rearview mirror, The waterfall diminished until it was just a distant roar. Some people spend their whole lives pretending to be something they're not. Diana had pretended to be the perfect sister while plotting my death. I had pretended not to see her true nature until it almost killed me. Now we were both exactly who we were meant to be. She was inmate number 247,891, serving 30 years for trying to kill her sister. And I was alive, successful, free. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just surviving, it's thriving. As I merged onto the highway, a familiar song came on the radio, one Diana and I used to sing as children, back when we were just sisters, before money and jealousy and murder plots complicated everything. I switched it off. Some ghosts are better left unsung.